Hello, everybody, and welcome to the fourth special edition of the Frank and Stan chat. We call these Spotlight. And for those of you watching on the video, you'll notice that my colleague in crime, Stan, is not with us today. He's looking after a poorly grandchild. So I'm delighted to say it's going to be a straightforward chat between myself and our guest, Shaheen Myers. Hello, Shaheen.
Hi, Frank. How are
Hello.
you?
Yeah, I'm very well. We have had Shaheen on as a guest on the Frankenstein chat, and Shaheen has started a new business, and it's quite relevant, really, to what leaders are thinking about and the sorts of things that are going on in schools and colleges at the moment. So I thought what we'll do is we'll bring Shaheen back and just chat about why is this avid football fan and golfer and former colleague that I've worked with before, what is she doing now? Because she's venturing into a business on her own. So I thought we'd give her a platform and find out what Shaheen's up to. So thanks for doing this, Shaheen.
Oh, thank you so much, Frank. It's lovely to be invited back. I really enjoyed our last chat. It doesn't really feel like a podcast chat. It's just people catching up and talking about relevant issues. And I think that's why it's so popular. It just feels like a home, really, like a
Oh, that's so
where
kind.
you have a chat. So yeah, thank you for inviting me back. Between the avid football fan and golf, I don't really have much time, but no.
What team is it that you support? Who?
I support too.
Two.
There's a reason. There's a justified
So
reason.
you're a real avid and quite avid fan.
I am an avid fan. Liverpool growing up, so Liverpool is my team, and then my husband was equally as avid football fan, and he supported Man City, and obviously with him passing away, I've kept that
Ah,
so, Man City and Liverpool. It's been really interesting when we were playing each other because we hated conflict. So we were very, very much, I'm going to really cheer for your team. I'm going to cheer for you until the
I,
first goal was scored, and then we just sort of, oh.
so you were in the last minute as the 2-2 was coming to the last minute between Liverpool and City.
Yeah.
You were hoping that City were going to score. Seriously, I don't believe that.
Inside, no, but in oh.
But externally, yes. But actually, that's quite interesting, isn't it? About the sort of work you're involved in now in this new business, because it's a little bit around that. Do you want to just explain what you're up to?
So I am a former deputy director for Leeds. I left post in early August, and during the time of sort of thinking about leaving, I was really heavily involved with lots of conversations with DFE and Ofsted around recruitment and retention crisis and why we've got really good leaders leaving the profession. And obviously we've got to consider there's been a post-pandemic recovery, and we have had lots of external demands placed on heads and CEOs and senior leaders and teachers. And really that sort of faith being lost in the system and doing everything else but teaching, doing everything but the teaching and learning, doing what brings you joy, and having really to be at that face of we need to improve our attendance, and we need to make sure we're Ofsted ready, and we need to make sure that our staff are absolutely capable, highly skilled, and we've got this new Ofsted framework that was brought in just before the pandemic, and we need to make sure that we've got 9 months to get all our curriculum progression, and everyone needs to know it inside out. So really, everyone's not been allowed to sit back and just sigh, just breathe, reset and reflect. And in Leeds, I had the highest head teacher vacancy rate we've ever had. And there were reasons behind this, some belonging to trust and some belonging to maintain schools, and not the natural progression coming up that you would normally find.
Well, a lot of people saying, I just don't want that big job.
Right.
I'm quite happy where I am.
Yeah.
The risks are too great, both
yeah.
the risk professionally, but also the risk personally.
That's right. I think seeing it and watching it, and knowing that you're so far removed now, you're not as visible. I do remember, Frank, when I applied to the co-op firstly, what really drew me towards that was visible leadership. Don't sit in your office, don't sit behind a desk. Get out there, be visible, and be the leader that you've been employed to be. And we kind of have, in a way, removed that purpose, I think, at the start. So the business has been formed twofold, really. One is to address that recruitment and retention, and ultimately it's bringing back the joy, having some balance, so that we can be vulnerable and know that we can set some clear boundaries for ourselves and for others. I know that we shouldn't always hold it all on our own. So it's a place really to be seen and heard. And for balance itself, it's born out of bringing that love back into the profession. Why are we in it? What's the purpose? I did a training session a couple of weeks ago. It's a twilight training session with teachers, and I asked them to go back and recollect why they entered the profession. And actually, just in a room of 30 people, I heard different stories. Some where the stories were about their childhood, and some just fell into the profession by accident, and some had parents who were in the profession. And everyone shared this sense of, we're all in it together. We really, really love the profession. We want to make a difference. But tangibly, we don't know how to do it anymore, because the levers, the metrics have changed so much that we're no longer just teaching. We are the social worker. We are the doctor with the physician, the mental health support. We're providing everything above, and actually we're depleted as a workforce. So balanced is really to recognise and bring the importance and the gravitas to support leaders in understanding that it's absolutely okay not to balance everything. It's absolutely okay to clear your mind, reset your focus, and think about what truly matters. And there's some of the feedback I've had recently where we've started to do some of that work. Supervision and well-being is, we haven't thought like this. We've never been shown to think like this. Yeah. And for me, there's something in the MPQs. We do go through modules of, governance and leadership management and different management styles. But actually, what we're not doing is talking about people management. And the job is 90% of that. It's people management. And what we've removed is the people management, but actually individual management. So how do you manage yourself as a leader is as important as how you're managing your staff and your teams. And the second,
just to say that, I mean, I've worked for, the worst thing is when you work for somebody who actually says one thing and then you can tell they're doing something completely different. I mean, in a way, senior leaders owning up to mistakes, owning up to struggling with work pressure. Some people say, well, but your staff won't want to hear that. That makes it look as though, you're fallible. It makes you look as though you're not on it, But actually, I find as I became more confident, I found it helped me, and people wanted to lean in to help me as well, and that sort of meant that I was then freer to accept that there were weaknesses, probably in my leadership towards others, that I'd probably overburdened. I was unaware of some of the things that were going on in their life, or in their, both at home and at work. All of those sorts of things became easier when I was able to admit to myself that I wasn't as good as I've been. But basically, I wasn't as good as people thought I was. I suppose that's the top and bottom of it.
I think you're right. Again, referring back to staff training, I asked about impressions. What impressions have they got about senior leaders in the school? And they said those words, the head's not fallible. And the head's sitting there looking at me. She said, I absolutely am. And I know she is, because I'm working really closely with her. But we're discouraged to be vulnerable. Yes. It's seen as a sign of weakness. And what struck me in that meeting, that staff training, at the end, I asked them all to think about what do they appreciate about themselves. And they tell me what they appreciate about others, not themselves. And this reframing of, well, we're asking our children to articulate their emotional intelligence all the time. And we were asking them to describe how they're feeling, what they're thinking. And we can't say what we appreciate about ourselves as a profession. So if we can't do that, I asked for 3 things and I hardly got one.
Oh, right.
And I had to change it. And I thought that's just so eye-opening. that actually this self-care, this self-worth, the value is so missing, and how can we bring that back in? And the other reason, the real reason for setting up Balance really is because my husband and I both had, you know me well, Frank, and we've got this passion for education. We've got the love for the children. We want to make sure, like everybody has, that is featured first in everything, that care, that respect, that dignity, and that children are at the heart. It's not a cliche, but they are at the heart of all decision-making process. And we get lost, and we're getting lost because we've got all these external demands, but how do we bring that? And for me, my late husband was, I would say he embodied that, the love of the teacher. And I remember, Frank, when I first started working with you, you referred to one of John Hattie's book,
Yeah.
Visible Learning and Meta-Analysis, and in there, the relationship between child and teacher is one of the most important ones.
Yes.
And again, the MPQs really don't really talk about that very much. There isn't the professional development on that. You either have it naturally as a teacher, some people believe, or you don't have it, but actually you can develop that. So this is really in response.
Just one thing, because I think we'll move off it, was something Stan has mentioned, that in as a social worker, you are allocated a colleague who you can talk to without it. You can talk through an issue, a case, or how you're feeling, and that actually doesn't sort of reflect on your sort of performance. It's a release. We don't have, I mean, some colleagues are lucky to have somebody like that. They might have a partner, or they might have another person in the school or the trust, but it does feel, as Stan says, we probably do need to create that sort of dialogue with another colleague in a school, to enable that sort of release of those sorts of issues, to upload it.
No, you're right. It's funny because I mentioned recently about the uploading and how therapeutic it can be, and we had a bit of a laugh because I called it conscious uploading. So being aware that when you're uploading, we're aware that it's a two-way process, and that we're given the same amount of equity in that conversation to upload to each other. Otherwise, it just becomes one way. But you're right. There is something about, we talked about certain emotions, so that you carry around, and they're in your body really for about 9 hours. So if you start the day frustrated as a leader, as a teacher, you retain that. And the energy is felt by everybody. It's felt by your colleagues. It's felt by the children, whether you're conscious of it or not. It's still there. So I think the conscious uploading now is a phrase that the school are using in quite a humorous way.
So in terms of the work you do with senior leaders, how's that progressing? What are they looking for from you and the company that you run?
I think it's knowing that there's a different perspective that comes when often some of our leaders have worked from being a teacher to a middle leader and so on and so forth. And perspectives change, don't they? And it's knowing and being aware of how teachers feel. So if you're a senior leader, it's knowing that. And yes, we have teacher questionnaires and audits and tools that we can gather opinions, etc. But do we really know? Does it really gather? Does it really give the indication of how people are really feeling? Because often they do miss those kind of questions. So to start with, my work comes in and I audit that, really. I audit that with the leaders first and foremost, and then I work with the staff. And we kind of bring that together in partnership. And what we do is I work with the senior leaders first. Right. And then we sort of, we think about what is it that we need. So one school, for example, is working on their package of performance management to make that really, really conscious and completely reframing the whole thing. So the questions I asked, how do we do that? How do we bring in wellbeing performance management, but create it so that actually there's high challenge and high support within that structure? But how are your teachers developed consciously so that they have those adaptive teaching techniques that will allow them to reflect on their teaching and learning? What is it that we want to achieve here? And how can we have those regular check-ins? And everyone adopts a policy. And I do remember the school being quite vulnerable and saying, well, it's always been done that way, so therefore we're just following, adopting a policy, but we haven't really thought about the structure. So we've stripped it right back. And a part of that is supervision for the senior leader. So as I said before, we're starting with senior leaders. So there's wellbeing supervision on a bi-weekly sort of calendar with this school.
Oh, so it's timetabled.
It's timetabled
Is it? Right,
for the senior leaders.
right.
And then from there, we're working on the wellbeing strategy for the entire school. So that's working with staff, and that's doing the staff training and governance training, and then there's performance management.
Right.
And we're sort of making sure that at each part of that school's journey, there's something on wellbeing there. It actually interlinks into all of the other areas. And then we're looking at the people learning voice and how we're going to use that in a way which is more authentic, and lead to greater success for the school. But again, there's a wellbeing focus on that as well. So sometimes people believe that wellbeing is just coming in and do some airy fairy work. And it absolutely...
No, but it's at the heart of the leadership, isn't it? It's at the heart of how things are done. I mean, I'm interested in, you need to be open to this, don't you, as a leader? You know, there may well be stuff that comes out of all of this that's quite difficult to take, you know, but well done to the leaders who've embarked on this, you know, because at least you understand, or they're going to experience the fact that it can be quite painful. I mean, in effect, I'm not wanting you to reveal, you know, the details of your conversations with the heads that you're supporting, but I'm thinking, you know, what are the risks then for leaders in going down and really embracing this approach?
I think apart from being vulnerable and knowing that it's okay to let your guard down, that it's fine, you're only human, and to demonstrate your humanness is a way of being absolutely kind and compassionate to yourself first and foremost. So a lot of our work is to say, how do we bring our best selves to work? What's that best self look like? And they have gone on a journey where they feel that they haven't ever been asked these questions before. So they feel so mentally challenged and stimulated, but at the same time, they're so excited. So the vulnerability is, yes, you do shed a tear now and again. And that is a risk, but actually, what are we getting out of it? So I ask, when I work with the leaders, we work on something called 3 most important questions, which is, you know, what do I want to experience? How do I want to grow? And what do I want to contribute? And that then is part of their supervision, but it's now becoming part of performance management. And the way that I sort of work with them is to say, actually, are you a passive participant in this school? Or are you an active creator? And just the time to sit back. So the risk might be time. Where do we find the time to do it? And then it's reframing our mindset to say, actually, by you becoming your best self, by you having time dedicated to your development so that you are your best in this role, whatever best it is that you've identified, then it will have a knock-on effect. Because you can't give to people when your cup's empty. You've got to fill yours first.
Yeah.
And it's understanding that. And I think it's understanding the physiological reactions to what happens when we're stressed. What's that look like for us? What have we experienced so far? And what is it that you're wanting to achieve as a leader in the next 3 years? And, you know, it's just so interesting because it's
What that triggered in me was Philippa, our middle child, is type 1 diabetic. So she knows when she's going low. She now has a pump that does it automatically. But previously, when she was younger, because she was diagnosed when she was 10, she would have hypos, and we would have to give her either an EpiPen or whatever it is, or in early days, sort of put this gel into her mouth to get her blood sugars up. But actually, the thing for me was around there was a very clear indication of when she was going into a hypo. And I suppose, in a sense, what was triggering this for me is quite helpful if leaders actually could identify in their own way indicators of them demonstrating a lack of empathy, or a lack of, or an indication of stress levels, you know, an unacceptable level of stress It's a bit like grade descriptors or something, but that'd be quite helpful, wouldn't it, for individuals? Because it would be different for people, and you probably do need people to tell you what those indicators are, because it might be difficult for you to identify or see them yourself.
Yeah, that's right. I think that, yeah, that it's difficult, isn't it? Again, it's coming back to about being a courageous leader and looking introspectively at how you won, how you turn up, and what decisions you make. And I think that when you don't clearly define what it is that you're trying to achieve, or what you want from the role, from the school, from yourself as an individual within that, it quickly goes. Your boundaries are, there's no boundaries at all within that, because you're not clearly defining what you're trying to set out to
Yeah, yeah.
achieve. So you're right, I don't know what it would look like to an indicator, but there's certainly something about bringing awareness. So do you know when you're depleted? What does that look like for you? And
Right.
yes, it's very much on an individual by individual basis.
That's an
Um,
interesting word, depletion. When
yeah.
you're depleted, I've not heard it being used in that way before. Um, as if the barrel's low.
Yes. You're always accessible as a leader. So when we're working with heads, with senior leaders, I often identify first, how accessible are you? And I watch that. I actually watch, I'm with them and I watch, and everybody is coming to them
Yeah,
all the time. And whatever their to-do list is, or whatever strategic thinking they need to do, is in the back burner, and it builds and it builds and it builds, and the other demands just start to rise. So they are accessible all the time. Sometimes they're accessible day and night and weekends. So clear boundaries haven't been set. So you are depleted because you're not really carrying out your role effectively enough. What you are is just available all the time to everybody. And then it becomes we don't really want to close the door, but you're not necessarily closing the door. You're doing the work needed to be done in order to achieve,
yes,
to create those conditions for success in your school, and basically to lead. So what do really healthy boundaries look like? And one piece of work that we're doing with teachers and leaders at the moment is breaking down the assumptions that we have. So the
right.
assumptions of, we're looking at self-responsibility as a key one of that. So
I was
how do we
going to say that was the phrase. And for those of you that
yeah,
aren't cooperators, this is one of the co-op principles, I think it's called, of self-responsibility. Because actually, being in a position where staff feel as though they have the right to try and resolve the issue themselves, and then go to a leader, having said, "Well, I've actually tried this." It's that sense of self-responsibility that you bring into the discussions, isn't it?
yeah, it is. It's self-responsibility and self-regulation, because it's how do those two marry, and what does it look like in the structure of this school? And we've got different schools. We've got different schools with different journeys, and some who are very stable and therefore believe that the senior leaders are open to them on a
Yes.
basis, and don't exercise that self-responsibility or regulation as often as they can do. And then it becomes an efficacy. Do they feel they've got the autonomy and efficacy to be able to do that? And what does that look like? And do we then have some teachers who are becoming despondent because they don't believe they have the efficacy because they've been micromanaged? So it's honestly so eye-opening, but it's eye-opening for the leaders themselves, because they start on a journey of self-realization with this work, and realize very quickly that sometimes they're not the creators or the influencers they thought they were. They're
Yeah.
just reacting, and it's because of the system that we have learned that we have to react, because of dealing with the challenges that we are dealing with on a constant basis, day by day. Every school day is different.
Yeah. I mean, um, how busy are you, I suppose, in a sense? Has it really taken off the business?
It is. It's spreading very, very local. It's very word of mouth at the moment, sort of locally, and it's great to know that there's an appetite. It's great to know that this was the right decision I made, because I left secure employment,
Yes.
start summing up in a gap that I saw, that for people just to feel that there's somebody there for them. And I think you alluded to that earlier in the conversation, that often it's your partner or your husband or your wife or family members that have to bear the brunt of all of that.
Yes.
And sometimes you don't want to talk. So at the end of a very, very long day, you just go inward, don't you? And you're still carrying that with you. So we need something for our leaders, particularly for our leaders, I'm saying, because it can be a very lonely place for leaders, and we need them to be able to feel that they have that support network out there.
Yeah, yeah,
And eventually I'm hoping that this will grow so that there's a team of like-minded individuals that can go out and work with schools and trusts, and so on and so forth. So yes, at the moment it's in infancy, and I'm pretty sure that it won't take very long for it to.
no. Well, if somebody wanted to, I know you have a website. What is the name of the website?
It's balanced, so
Alan.
balance.co.uk.
Okay. And I mean, we do have people around the country with so Shaheen's based. I'm not quite sure where you live these days, but it's in the northwest, so
Nearly.
on the Yorkshire side of the Pennines.
It is, yeah, near Leeds.
Yeah, yeah. What we'll do at the end of the chat, there'll be a little link, a link to the website as well. And just to say thank you very much for joining us. And in a way, for me, it's lovely to see colleagues who brought so much to the work that I was trying to lead on, move on to a very senior role, and to actually sort of then use that as a stepping stone, you know, and all the stuff that goes on around our lives, you know, using that as a sort of vehicle for helping others. I'm not surprised you're doing this now, Shaheen, to be honest. So I hope it goes well. And again, if you want to make contact, just reach out to Shaheen. I'm sure wherever you are, she'll be there for you.
Oh,
Okay. Well, thank you
thank
very
you.
much. And yeah, and the Frankistan chat will be back at the end of October with somebody you know, Carolyn Ayres is joining us. So the safeguarding guru is coming back to speak, to give an update on all matters regarding safeguarding. So until then, thank you, Shaheen, and we'll see you all. Bye bye.
Bye.